Welcome to the Worldview Financial Report. It is July 8th, 2024. Hope you had a great 4th of July weekend, got some rest, got in the sun, enjoyed some family time. And Delta says, happy July 8th as well. She's in the studio today. Listen to that grunt and carrying on. Is it that new camera? All right, maybe we should go to that camera shot and show everybody what she's excited about. This dog is one of the smartest dogs I've ever had. Anything new that comes in the building, she notices. And we now have a new robotic arm in the studio that's moving that camera, and she does not like it. She noticed it right away. There you go. She notices that that camera is moving on its own across the room. You're going to hyperventilate over that, Delta? All right. Time to chill out. But that's how smart she is. This dog, my wife buys something new for the house and puts it down where it is in her line of sight. She'll go and start barking at it. It's not supposed to be there. She knows what's supposed to be in a room, what's not. That new robotic arm that just got used for the first time in front of her. There you go. All right, joining me now are two very watchful dogs themselves. Joining me now are Wes Peters and Michael Weiner. Guys, welcome back. July 8th, as Delta's growling in the background, ready to tear that camera moving across the room apart. Did you guys have a good 4th? Yeah,
I did, even though I was busy helping a friend move all weekend.
You're such
3.5 hours up, 3.5 hours back, loading the trailers, unloading the trailers.
Wow.
You're
a good friend. You're a really good friend, Wes. Good for you.
I'm hearing that from other people. They're like, a lot of people tell me I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it either. Nope.
What friends do.
That's what you hire people for. All right. Particularly at my age, having broken my back. Let's see. Michael, what did you do? Let me guess, Michael. You went to play golf.
That would be correct.
Okay.
Played golf, relaxed, took it easy, did a lot of reading, caught up, and then lost my cell phone, had to go get a new one, that type of stuff.
Yeah. What happened to your cell phone, Wes? Michael?
I think it disappeared with somebody driving down to Prescott. So
What does it mean?
So they have all the corporate secrets now.
No, they have a brick. So
They have the corporate secrets or not?
Nope, they don't have anything.
All right. Sorry. Let's talk about these articles right here today. Goldman Sachs fails its Fed stress test. That's one of the articles we're going to deal with today. Play a video here. Morgan Stanley Wilson says 10% market correction, highly likely. Ooh, a whole whopping 10%. He should only be so lucky. Klaus Schwab, we must force humanity into collaboration. And then U.S. debt explodes 6 months as ex-CIA director says America's balance sheet is national security threat. No, the CIA is the threat, moron. Wells Fargo illegally claims customers are liable for unauthorized transactions, say victims of bank fraud, as new class action lawsuit filed in federal court. The G7 versus the, what is that, triumphant? The three nations. What is that? What is that word, guys? Triumvirate? What is that?
Triumvirate?
Yeah, what is that? I don't know. You have to tell me what that means, Wes. The three nations aiming for dethroning the U.S. dollar. And Whoopi Goldberg says she does not care if Biden pooped his pants or can't put a sentence together. Quote, I'm not even going to read that lest someone think it's my words. But we'll let her speak for herself. All right, joining me again are the three of us here for the Worldview Financial Report. Let's go to this first one right away. Goldman Sachs fails Fed stress test. Tell me about that, Wes.
Well, any bank, any financial institution that has over $250 billion in assets has to go through an annual stress test. And Goldman Sachs obviously did not pass that stress test. And it shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, it says that Goldman missed the target completely and ended up below the minimum capital level for the bank. Remember, each test is different for each bank. Thus, the test results show how the Fed views a given bank business model. So this test that they do on these banks, Brannon, it's not level across the board. They put in all these different parameters depending on the bank. So these stress tests, I don't take them at all at face value.
Okay.
The problem the Fed has is, again, they have to keep people at ease, thinking everything is fine, because they don't want people to have the fear of their bank failing, which could cause a run on the banks. And if you look at the banks that failed since 2023, First Republic, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, Heartland Tri-State Bank, all of those banks that failed never had a stress test because they were under $250 billion. All of them, except for one, was over $200 billion, close to 250, but those banks never went through a stress test. So that's one thing I would tell the viewers and listeners is wherever you're banking, take a look and see if what they have for assets. And if it's not over 250 billion, your bank is not going through that stress test, which again, I would take those results with a grain of salt, even if they are being tested.
Mm-hmm. And your thoughts, Mr. Weiner?
They're always soft pedaled. Okay. All these stress tests are soft pedaled. But what's disturbing about it, even soft pedaling, Goldman Sachs is a financial powerhouse. They made some mistakes. They got into the retail credit business where they were doing credit cards to the public. That stopped. They drew that back in. But this stress test situation is all pretty perfunctory. And for them to come out and say this about Goldman is disturbing because Goldman is a huge institution and a powerhouse. And if they are in trouble, there's a lot of other people in trouble. And that's when we talk about community banks and savings and loans and excuse me, credit unions, not savings and loans. The reality is that the smaller banks, if there's a problem, are the first ones to go under. They'll collapse well before the Wells Fargos or the B of A's will. That'll always happen. The nationalization will always happen with the largest banks, not the smallest ones. So you got to be careful.
All right, let's go to the next.
And Goldman Sachs, Brannon, Goldman Sachs has been around since 1869. So they've been around a long time.
Indeed. All right, let's go to this next article. This is actually a video clip. Morgan Stanley's Wilson says 10% market correction, highly likely. I think that's a little bit optimistic. Well, let's see what he has to say here.
How much can these companies start to deliver here? How much of an issue are they going to have if they don't?
Well, I think this is one area where, once again, bad is bad. Okay, so I would argue that, weaker economic data is potentially good for multiples generally, at least if you're delivering on the earnings. But if you have bad earnings reports, you're going to get punished. And that's been consistent all year, which is why the average stock is down this year. The average company has not had good earnings results.
That's a good point to make, Mike, by the way, because we talk about, Jess Menton from our equities team writes about this earnings expansion that we're in, 3 quarters in a row of growth, but it's only 7, 8, maybe 10 companies. The other 490 in the S&P are not doing well. So what has to happen for them to grow, to increase their earnings to do well?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's more than 7 companies, but it's not more than probably 30 or 40. So it's narrow. It's like a nifty 50 almost is what I would characterize it. Now, what needs to happen? Once again, we need the Fed to cut meaningfully. We need the curve to re-steepen. We need cost of capital to come down. We need the labor markets to loosen up in a way where, these smaller businesses can actually hire people at a reasonable price. They need pricing power to come back. One thing that gets overlooked is companies are losing pricing power now. So while we're all rooting for lower inflation, once again, weaker inflation is not great for earnings. Small cap businesses, small cap companies like Russell 2000 typically only does well coming out of a recession, coming out of a new cycle. Why? Because rates are low, curve is fully steepened, access to capital is abundant, and they have operating leverage again. That's just not where we are. So we need rates to come down as number one, or we need some sort of exogenous positive shock on the growth side that doesn't lead to an inflationary problem. So you tell me where that's coming from. I think it's going to be it's a challenge, and that's why we're not going to fight this trend. I mean, the momentum is so strong because it's right. Now, what worries me is that momentum is so strong, and people have a lot more exposure to high multiple stocks than they think they do. And if you have an event that's unpredictable, then you could have a real reset on valuation of 10, 15%. I think the chance of a 10% correction is highly likely sometime between now and the election. Not just because of the election, but because uncertainty is going to prevail for a lot of different reasons. Earnings reasons, election outcome reasons, some of the things you mentioned earlier around tariffs, potentially immigration, Fed policy still remains uncertain. So yeah, I think the third quarter typically is that period, and it's going to be choppy. Now we're hoping that's going to create some opportunity, but right here, valuations to me look very, very unexciting.
All right, so I think that's a little optimistic, don't you, Wes?
Yeah, very. I think, we've talked about analysts talking about 40-50% correction in the stock market.
70%, we've heard one guy say.
Yeah. So again, I think 10% is very, very conservative. I think we're going to see significantly more than that. And what's interesting, Brandon, is out of 500 companies in the S&P 500, he's saying at the best, 50 of them have positive earnings. So 10% of the companies are actually, making a living and having a positive return. What about the other, 450?
Good question.
So
Michael?
Not good.
Michael Weiner?
Well, to expand on that, the Nifty 50 that he called that are doing business, which is a good analogy. Though that 10%, who cares? If they're making a couple bucks, it doesn't really matter. It's not a reflection of the economy. What's a reflection of the whole stock market is, number one, computer trading, but putting that aside, what's going on as it relates to these 7 or 8 companies. There's a difference between positive earnings and driving the market. What's driving the market is these 7 companies, being NVIDIA, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. They play ping pong between each other. So one day it's Amazon, one day it's Google, one day it's Apple, one day it's NVIDIA. And it's really not a market that's moving in a direction where an investor should sit back and say, this is a great place to be. It's not. And not only is it not a great place to be, but most of their advisors are not putting them in these 7 stocks. They're putting them in a mutual fund. And those mutual funds are made up of a multitude of different companies. The biggest benefit out of the mutual fund is to the advisor, because they're making money under management every day. So my only advice to people is this market is due to have a correction. The problem is based on the lack of strength. When it does hit, it could tumble. It could tumble.
All right, let's go to our next news report, and that is Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, let's look at what he has to say.
At the same time, we are witnessing rapid technological advances with many opportunities and with artificial intelligence rapidly transforming our production and our lives. And breakthroughs from the 4th Industrial Revolution provide new opportunities for global prosperity and growth. All those factors will have a profound impact on the future of humanity, provided we are able to work together. To drive future economic growth, we must embrace innovation and foster collaboration across sectors, regions, nations, and cultures to create a more peaceful, inclusive, sustainable, and resilient future. At this critical juncture, the active participation of all stakeholders is essential to ensure a sustainable development path. I'm delighted that close to 2,000 leaders from multiple sectors, representing some 80 countries and regions, have come to Dalian for this year's meeting.
Wow. Now, this guy, there's just not enough words to express my disgust at this. Go ahead. Go ahead. Give it a shot, Michael.
Well, the guy is a total socialist Marxist. I mean, his accent's befitting. He fits right into the Nazi type garbage. He's a national socialist. He's a Marxist. He's a communist. Look at all those happy faces out there. It makes you want to run the other way. These are all people that are involved with the economies around the world, but most of those economies are not a free marketplace. Klaus wants nothing to do with capitalism. He wants to destroy it. He wants you to live your life communally with other nations, share your wealth. You might as well move people into your house because you're not going to have one. This guy makes Soros look good, actually, in some respect. And he doesn't say anything other than this reset that he wants to have as a means of taking control of the financial systems of the world. And the main financial system of the world is us. The problem is the people in Washington and that guy who's in the White House have no clue of how to run things against this. If anything at all, they're running with it, which should scare all of us. When Biden talked the other day, when they gave him enough smelling salts and whatever shot they shot him with to talk about Trump never talking about his economic policies, that's absolute garbage. He talks about it all the time. They haven't had a policy here. That's the whole problem. They just follow and allow people to trample us. And that's where a guy like this is getting all this notoriety. Because when people have no place to go, when they have no capitalism to see bright shining on a hill, they run in other directions and they go to idiots like this guy who is a National Socialist, Marxist, Communist creep who they think might have a good idea because we're not putting out any. This administration.
And let's not forget, this conference was held in China. So you wondered why all the Chinese sitting there on the front row with their little CCP red pins. I don't know if any of you guys noticed that. This was held in China. And of course, this is the Great Reset Conference that the World Economic Forum hosted. And their first keynote speaker out of the gate was Xi Jinping of China. So again, this tells you everything you need to know about the World Economic Forum. They're going to push us toward, as Klaus has already said, the public-private partnership, something I've been talking about now for, 25 plus years. Communitarianism, big government, big business mixed together. Communitarianism, the social credit score. You spit on the sidewalk, they know it, they have cameras everywhere. You jaywalk, they know it, they have cameras everywhere, it comes out of your account. The 15-minute cities, which some are calling freedom cities. Don't buy it, folks. Don't buy it. They're going to sell you digital gulags as freedom cities. Freedom from crime, freedom from blight, freedom from whatever, theft. That's how they're going to, but it's going to be absolute, utter control of your life. When you can leave, when you cannot leave. If you leave, you get penalized. You decide you want to go help your buddy move 3 hours north like Wes did. He's going to be penalized because he just drove too far. He just spent too much on fossil fuels. Don't buy the people selling you this as freedom cities. This is complete, ghettos minus the star and the Jews. This is a ghetto coming from a guy who I think his dad had a Nazi background. Did he not, Michael? Didn't this dude's dad have a Nazi background?
Yep, correct. Like I said, he makes George Soros look like a great guy. And actually, I'm sure they must have lunch together once a week because this is just pure evil, And again, the biggest problem is we've stood up to this type of stuff in the past. We were this light on the top of the hill that people could look up to, and we don't have that anymore. Instead, we have a fumbling, mumbling guy running the White House. And now, after 3 years of everybody seeing it every day, you've got to remember 2 weeks ago, we were told that it was fake news and doctored videos. Now it's no longer doctored videos. And all of a sudden, miraculously, they all woke up until they don't. So in other words, once they get to where they want this to be, they'll start covering up for them all over again. So we have no leadership, no financial leadership, no military leadership, and that's when guys like this proliferate, and that's how Hitler came along. Same thing happened under Roosevelt. No leadership, no financial leadership, no strength, all weakness, and look what happened, World War II.
Indeed. All right, let's go to the next one. Yeah, go ahead.
We're heading to a one world digital currency also, Brannon, as we talked about before.
Yeah.
So they can track your social credit score and freeze your account or whatever if you're not towing the line of their requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, folks, I don't give financial advice here. We give financial opinion. I do. But I believe it's my opinion. It's my opinion that I believe if you want to try to protect your assets you've worked your whole life for, most of you who have them either in your house or in your 401k, that's where most people have their hard-earned life savings, is either in their house are in their 401k. Your house, I'm not too worried about. It's a hard asset. It'll be there when it all washes over. So good for you, for those of you that have paid off your house or close to it. Your 401k is a different story. I'm very concerned for those who have worked their whole life, dumped it into the 401k. Then when there's an ICE 9, as Jim Rickards calls it, everything is locked down. As we heard the former congressman years ago from Pennsylvania say, you know, we had to have a digital lockdown because there was a digital run in the bank. Your stuff, I think, is going to be locked down. You're going to watch as your assets just whoop, and you're going to do nothing about it. That's my opinion. But if you would like to offset some of that, this again is where you can, you know, diversify into at least a percentage of your 401k into gold, physical hard asset that is put into a depository in Delaware. It is yours. It is, you're able to eventually take custody of it. It'll be a taxable event, I understand, but you could take custody of it at some point, backed by Lloyd's of London. Am I getting all this right, guys?
Yep.
You are.
All right. Get that packet, 602-558-8585. No obligation, free packet of information. Just text Wes Peters at that number, 602-558-8585. You guys want to say anything about that before I go to the next article?
Hey, I'll say one quick thing, and that is, I said it before and I'll say it again. Every time there's a disaster, people get no notification. It's like the people jamming Wall Street, and it's like 2008. All of a sudden, you go to sleep one night, and everything is great. You wake up the next morning, the market's crashing, and you can't get out, and you're losing a ton of money. And by the time you can get out, you've already lost 30, 40, 50, 60%, and some people never get it back. And the question becomes, what are you doing about it now? We try to plan ahead and strategically put you positioned. We don't tell you to take every dime out of the bank and do business with it. We try to set up an asset preservation program while you can, because the first thing they're going to do is stop the music and stop your ability to move assets. Then you will be really stuck. Go ahead, Brannon.
Let's see. Let's go to the next one. All right, here we go. U.S. debt explodes. Former CIA director says America's balance sheet is national security threat. That's Mike Pompeo. I don't really trust Mike anymore, but U.S. government's surging debt burden has caught the attention of former Secretary of State and ex-CIA director Mike Pompeo. Hey, newsflash, Mike Pompeo, the CIA is a national security threat. What did you do about it when you were the CIA director, Mike? What did you do about it? Did you encourage President Trump to open up all the files on the Kennedy assassination and release those, or were you one of the people telling him, oh, don't do that? Wasn't it Mike Pompeo that was working to try to assassinate Julian Assange overseas, according to Tucker Carlson and others? So I don't know, Mike. You're worried about the national debt? I think you personally are a national security threat. I think the CIA you ran is a national security threat. This is what's called a distraction, folks. Yeah, the national debt's a problem. And yeah, it could be a national security threat, no doubt about it. But watch, don't look at this hand while we manipulate everything over here. This guy's a moron. I used to like this guy, but Mike Pompeo is I think, a traitor.
Yeah. Yeah, all good, valid points, Brannon. Absolutely. And when it comes to this out of control debt, what was it, $876 billion in 6 months that they've added? And again, it comes down to one thing. The spend everything you have and then some mentality that Washington has always had and will continue to have, and nothing's going to change. And I think they're going to use this debt crisis, which it's been for some time now, but this could be the black swan event that they use to replace the U.S. dollar and do some type of reset and convert all U.S. dollars to digital.
Yep.
And I think that's the end game. That's the plan. They're going to try and look like a knight riding in on a white horse to save the day, and everyone's going to fall right into their scheme of control. Again, once we go digital, you can kiss all privacy goodbye. Every transaction you make, everything you buy, again, they're going to know if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Catholic. They will know everything about you. And quite honestly, for the last 4 or 5 years, Brannon, that's one of the biggest reasons people are getting into physical gold and silver, especially with savings, because you can buy gold and silver that we don't need to know a single thing about that person. All we need to know is where do you want it shipped to? But better yet, down the road, they need to liquidate, they need to sell it. We'll cut them a check based off of whatever currency we're dealing in at that time. whether it be the dollar still or something digital, and no 1099 required, totally private. So for people that are concerned about the banks and the debt and going to a digital currency, at the very least, you should request our information and do some homework. And then if it makes sense, but you have some questions, doesn't cost a penny, doesn't obligate you to anything, call Michael and I would be happy to have a conversation. You can learn a whole lot in a 20 or 30-minute phone conversation. So that's what I would encourage.
Well, look at this. Wells Fargo illegally, here's the headline. Wells Fargo illegally claims customers are liable for unauthorized transfers, says victims of bank fraud, as new class action lawsuit filed in federal court. You know, Wells Fargo, in my opinion, has become one of the most disgusting banks on the planet. And that's coming from a guy that's been with them for a gazillion years. I was with them when I was like 12. They were Norwest. It became Wells Fargo. But their customer support, their customer service, it's a joke. This is a disgusting company. I've moved a lot of my business away from them, and I've told them up front. It's a disgusting company, in my opinion. Wells Fargo is facing, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. But then again, do you trust most bankers, folks? Do you really? Do you trust most bankers? Wells Fargo is facing a new proposed class action lawsuit accused of breaking the law by forcing customers to accept responsibility for unauthorized transactions. The suit filed by Jennifer Rice and Eric, whatever his name is, Westervelt, in a Pennsylvania federal court alleges Wells Fargo routinely violates the Electronic Funds Transfer Act by not reimbursing victims for their losses. Shocker. Wells Fargo? No. In December of 2023, the couple says they received a call from someone claiming to be from Wells Fargo, informed him that they had detected a fraudulent wire transfer on his account to the tune of over $24,000. The person on the phone said they couldn't halt the transfer as long as he confirmed the 6-digit code sent to him via text. When he confirmed the code, the $24,000 plus vanished from the joint account via wire transfer to an unknown user. After realizing he had been speaking with a con artist, they immediately went to the local Wells Fargo branch to report what happened. The bank's fraud department confirmed that the money had left his account and they would not be investigating the incident. But after 7 days, Wells Fargo called them to inform them they would not be reimbursed because they were the ones that authorized the transfer. What are your thoughts here, Michael?
I have a client, Wes and I do, that had that happen to her. She had a wire transfer that was illegally taken out of her account. Normally, banks can recall that. They can call the money back from where it goes to. And they have. I've had it happen at my old company. We had it happen. We call the wire back. Same thing if you have an ATM card and somebody breaches it. Then the banks usually saddle that up with you. And just like with a credit card, they take it and put it back because they can call the money back. The fact that Wells Fargo is just nonchalantly telling everybody, it's your problem. We don't want to be bothered with it. We don't want to know about it. What the question I would be asking is not only is that wrong, but the next question I'd be asking is what's next? What are you going to do to us next? I mean, now that whatever you do by mistake or happens in error, or if you get breached, in other words, if Wells Fargo gets breached and my account becomes known to other people and they use it, it's my fault? That's pretty much what they're saying to you.
Which is, again, another reason to take a good percentage of your assets off the table and put them 100% in your control.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's what we do.
These banks, they wouldn't walk across the street to spit on you if we were on fire, in my opinion.
Right. Absolutely.
Agree.
They don't watch you.
They're a number. The tellers and the people at the bank you deal with are nice people. I like the people, at the bank, not Wells Fargo, but I like the people at the bank I bank with. They're nice people, but they're just the face. They're not the company, really. Okay.
No.
Right.
So understand the people making the rules. Because, by the way, how many of you have been to your local branch and they're like, "This is ridiculous. We're going to get to the bottom of this. This is ridiculous." And then they try to get to the bottom of it and they can do nothing. They can do nothing about it. I had my credit cards illegally used. $3,500 on my credit card illegally, and the bank refused to reverse the fraudulent funds. The bank was like, "This is ridiculous." The people in the bank went to contend for me, and they were shocked. The headquarters said, sorry, but wait a minute, I thought you guys stood behind bank fraud. When someone uses your credit card fraudulently. Well, they just decided at a whim, no, this time we're not going to do anything about it. No.
Yeah. I'll tell you what they are very good at, Brannon. is when their customers go in to wire money somewhere to like Swiss America, they try and scare the pants off of them, about who are these people.
Yeah.
And, there's no doubt there's a lot of fraud going on.
Yeah, but isn't that
obviously.
interesting? The bank is worried about crooks. That's what you call psychological projection, in my opinion. The crooks are worried about crooks. Get the packet.
They're worried about,
Take care. That's
they're
our
worried
show.
about people